Thank you for joining us. Today's webinar topic is all about Cornwall and Devon in the beautiful and picturesque southwest corner of England. What we're all about for those members who are new to us, if you haven't joined one of our webinars before or been on a trip with us, the whole idea of a Wheel and Anchor came about 5 years ago. In fact, we literally are just celebrating our 5-year anniversary now. In this summer, we started this whole idea back in 2018. I have been organizing trips for Canadians to all kinds of places all around the world for the better part of 32 years. And during that time, I really got to see what the difference is between a terrific trip experience with a group of people and sort of an average tripping experience. And I've seen it all. And, you know, clearly when you get a group of people together who are, we say, like-minded. When we say like-minded, we mean they look at the world in the same kind of a way, and the way that we interact and we behave and we discover and we, you know, go about exploring the world is there's a commonality to it, particularly for us, and our community is predominantly, almost exclusively Canadians from coast to coast. And we have a lot of fun, and that's really the basic premise of what Wheel and Anchor is all about, is bringing travelers together for learning, for a lot of fun, and for a sort of soft touch look at the world. So that's our approach. And in doing that, we looked for our members to become well-traveled and well-connected. And so when we say well-traveled, and, you know, we have people in our community who have, you know, already been to 100 countries, and we have people who are just starting out with traveling and have not seen so much of the world. And the point is, it doesn't matter about how much you've seen. It's the quality of the experience that you have and the people that you meet along the way, the people that you're traveling with, as well as the people who are who you meet in the various countries and regions around the world that we visit. That's really what separates us from, I think, the mainstream, if you will, and what our mission is here at Wheel and Anchor. So we will hopefully have our local partner on board any minute now. I was just speaking to him an hour ago on Zoom. So just by way of brief introduction, my name is Gordon Drager. I'm the founder of Wheel and Anchor. And as I mentioned before, I have been organizing trips for Canadians for over 30 years. It is my passion. It's what I love to do. I love traveling with our members, and I love particularly to see the smile on people's faces when we show them a new part of the world, a new experience that they might not have had before. I could not do this without my amazing team of people, in particular our trip specialists, Paula Zarnik and Barb Kolmegis, and Barb is hiding behind her photo on the screen there. And Paula and Barb are the ones who you will speak to if you give a call into our office with questions about our trips, or to grab a spot on one of our amazing tours. And Niall McDougall is our local partner in Cornwall, who is the person together with whom we've put together this trip that we've been working on for quite some time. I see Niall has just joined us now, so we're just going to get him on board here. So the timing is just perfect, and he'll, and then we'll get rolling into the meat and potatoes. Good afternoon, Niall. I see your profile photo there. All right. So hopefully Niall is joining us in just a second here.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, apologies for that. Yeah, there was some last minute technical glitches there. I've had to jump through a few hoops to get on this, to be honest. I will go. I won't bore you with the details.
You made it. You made it. We can't see your video. It's not a problem. We've got your
let me just see if I can get that back. Yeah, let me. I'm sure I should. Oh yeah, there we are. Sorry. Yeah, I was just. That's this. We're here.
All right, we're good. All right, Niall, terrific. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for taking the time today. So I just gave the little preamble. We're just about to talk about the plan, which is, of course, to take you on a little tour through images and through the stories that Niall will share about this part of England that he is so passionate about, and where we are going to be visiting in the end of April, beginning of May of next year. So just to give you the geographic overview, which I like to do, of course, we're going to begin and end in London. That makes sense. We have a night included in the program at the beginning and at the end. So if you're flying in, of course, London is very familiar to many, if not most, of our members. And I always suggest, I love London. I love visiting London. So you might want to fly in a day earlier, or 2 or 3, or maybe you have friends or relatives in the UK that you want to visit. Of course, that's always an option. But certainly it's nice to even have one more day to sort of catch up on the jet lag. So we'll all gather in London. We'll get together the first day. We don't plan too much, but certainly go out. Nice to go out and take a long walk along the Thames or wherever it happens to be in London. And then our trip will begin with a train ride. So we're going to go by train, because I think a train is a great way to travel. And I always find it funny because all of my friends and colleagues in the UK are always very critical of the train system in the UK. I think it's great. I said, if you're critical of the train system in the UK, you should come to Canada. But anyway, that's another point. So we're going to take a train ride all the way down to Exeter, which is sort of the gateway to Cornwall and Devon, and then we'll spend the first few days in Truro, which you can see pictured here on the map. We're then going to head out to the Isles of Scilly, and that's, I think, what makes this program particularly special, because this is something that you don't often see on itineraries. And so it's a beautiful little archipelago, 5 islands down off the very southwest coast of England. We'll then come back to the mainland, spend a few more days up in Padstow on the north coast of Cornwall, before heading up for the last few days. Whoops, I'm jumping ahead, in Devon, before we then take the train back to London from Exeter. So that's the geographic overview of our program. And now, with Niall's help, we're going to talk just to give you a taste of what to expect along the way. So as I mentioned, we're going to start in London. It hardly needs any introduction, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about London. But as I say, if you feel like it, please do come in a day earlier. We're always happy to book pre-nights or post-nights for those that wish. And then we're going to hop on the train and make our way up to Truro. And so, Niall, time for you to share some of your stories and highlights about Truro. I've been to some of these places. It's been a long time. I know that Truro is a lovely Georgian sort of style town in Cornwall, and a great starting point.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, currently it's the sort of administrative and now officially the capital of Cornwall. I mean, obviously that the capital of Cornwall's changed over the years, but now it's settled, and Truro is very much the capital. As you say, yeah, it's got a Georgian sort of history. Its sort of heyday was the 18th and 19th centuries. Cornwall itself, the wealth that was in Cornwall was very much generated around mining, and a lot of the wealthy merchants would build, quite grand houses. So Truro itself has a number of wide sort of you say Georgian streets, sort of slightly reminiscent, I guess, of Bath, and not quite as grand as that necessarily, but certainly Lemon Street, which runs down into the centre of the town. It's got quite a quaint central area, the sort of shopping district. There's some old cobbled streets there, and obviously the building that dominates is the one in the picture that we're seeing, which is the cathedral, which was a sort of Gothic revival Victorian building, and really the last cathedral constructed in Britain. Yeah, we'll definitely be having a a sort of walking tour around the centre. It's easily walkable, nice and level, and we'll definitely dip in and see the cathedral, which is quite impressive.
Yeah, indeed it is. It's just a nice little starting point, and from Truro we can sort of tour around the area. We'll spend 4 nights in Truro, and then some of the places that we're going to take in are St. Ives, which I understand has a Tate gallery in it as well.
Indeed it does, yes. St. Ives is sort of very much is a sort of a hotspot, or a place that most people would like to visit. The reason why the Tate is there, its only outpost outside of London, is because St. Ives has for many years had become a place where sort of colonies of artists come together. It has a claim to having the best light for artists to paint with. Basically, it's sort of on a sort of peninsula with surrounded by the sea, and it means that they can view things in the best possible light. And over time, I think that's stretches back a long period, but in more recent times there was a collection of the sort of modern artists, and it's that those are the ones that feature in the Tate. Obviously some of the famous artists of the area. Barbara Hepworth, who's a sculptor in the early and mid 20th century, and she actually has a sculpture garden within St. Ives, which is features a lot of her famous works, and she was a very sort of groundbreaking sculptor. And yes, so that'll form part of the tour, would be a visit there as well.
And then this St. Michael's Mount. And so for our members, just to picture where we are, we're down now in basically the southwestern tip of England. Is that right?
Yeah, basically as far as you can go in the mainland, pretty much. I mean, you're within striking distance of Land's End, which is literally the last last stop before you get to the States and North America in general. So yeah, so St. Michael's Mount is Cornwall's got a long history of religion as in Christianity in terms, but obviously going back before prehistory, there's a lot of monuments and a lot of prehistory represented around Cornwall. But obviously the Christian saints came to Cornwall, and some of these sites have got a long history going back. And there's a church on the top of the mount there, which, obviously it's been added to over the years, but certainly it stretches back many hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. And it sort of mirrors the one the Mont Saint Michel, so they're sort of connected. It's our equivalent, and there really are connections, from the way that people travel between the two countries, because obviously there's quite a lot of similarity between the Cornish and the French of Brittany.
Yeah, indeed. So this will be a lovely day, as you say, spending out on this southwest and almost at the very end, almost at Land's End. We're going to spend another day up here at, and it's funny, it's English, but sometimes we struggle with the pronunciation. Is it Cairhays Castle that we're going to on our next day?
Cairhays or Carhays? Yeah, it actually varies, to be honest. But yeah, I'm not quite sure myself. People in Cornwall pronounce it differently.
There you go. And so in Cairhays, this castle, other than being yet another example of a beautiful English castle, is also known for its incredible gardens, as I understand it.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it's the historically a lot of the country house owners in Cornwall were very keen on traveling to the Far East to find plants and bring them back to Cornwall, where they could flourish, where they don't really flourish in other parts of the UK. So it's got a collection of magnolias and camellias, which fortunately they're at their peak when we'll be there. So yeah, in the springtime, that's what Cornish gardens really are famous for, their spring flowers.
It's going to be spectacular. And on this day in the afternoon, we're also going to visit Tregothnan, if I've pronounced it correctly.
Yeah, yes.
And have a little afternoon tea.
Well, yes, from the only tea plantation in the UK. So yes, it's The estate is the Boscawen family. There's a country house there, but they've along the banks of the Fowl River, they've set up some tea plantations, and as I say, it's quite a unique thing.
It's going to be super unique, and again, this is we don't think we think about, I mean, lots of tea being drunk in Britain, but we don't realize that, well, as you say, one of the only tea plantation in England itself. So as I said from the outset, from here now, from the mainland, we're going to head out. I guess we take the ferry from Penzance to over to the Scilly Islands, which a lot of Canadians will not be familiar with, because it's just that much further off of our radar screen. You said to me earlier on that you've traditionally gone here frequently with your family because it's such a beautiful part of the country. Tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's 28 miles from the coast of Cornwall, yes, I think it's a destination that once visited, never forgotten. So I think we started going when our children were very young, and we kept going basically back every year for 20 years, and we're going to have a bit of a reunion back there in September this year. So yeah, it does get under your skin a little bit. So yeah, it's quite a unique destination.
And I think, as I recall, you were saying that, the feeling here, the vibe is like Cornwall itself, but like decades earlier. So it's
absolutely, yeah. I think when you step off the boat onto in Hugh, which is St Mary's, where we'll be staying, the pace of life just slows down. Everything really runs on the tides, so you can't force the issue. You can go when you can go, and you can't if you can't go, you can't go. There are very few cars. It's mostly walking and boat trips between the various islands. So yeah, it's a very slow pace of life, and I would say it's Cornwall 50, 60 years ago. Some of the islands, the main island, St Mary's, has about 1,000 people, but some of the smaller ones will only have 70 or 80 permanent residents. Obviously it swells in the summer, but yeah. So yeah.
5 islands in total. We are going to see a couple of them while we're there, one of them being Tresco. We're going to do a little boat trip over to Tresco, which I guess is the second largest island in the archipelago. And I mean, none of them are very big. They're practically
no, maybe 2.5 miles by a mile.
Right.
This is the only privately owned island. It's owned by the Dorrian Smith family. The other islands are owned by the Duchy of Cornwall, Prince Charles, or King Charles now, as we call him, and he holidayed there with Diana and the children when they were younger, and now the children come and holiday on Tresco with their kids. So it's still got quite a royal connection.
Oh wow, that is super cool. So
yeah, William and Kate are quite often there.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe we'll be lucky and get a
well,
little.
You never know.
You never know. You never know who you're going to run into. So Tresco will be one of the islands, and again, the pictures sort of really tell the story of what to expect here. And it's fishing, I guess, is still a big part of the local commerce.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is the fishing fleet. They obviously service mostly the hotels and businesses on the island. The other industries are flowers. Actually, they because the islands are so mild, flowers start blooming in the winter, so they ship those to the mainland. So your daffodils that you see in the UK, a lot of them will come from Scilly.
Indeed. I see a question just came in along the way about, these different boat trips that we're doing around the island. What kind of boats will we typically be traveling in, and what's the distances? And I guess the implied question is it going to be rough at all?
No, the 5 islands forming an archipelago, they have they form a sort of a central lagoon. So all the boat trips between the islands take place within that lagoon, as it were. So although there's open sea can come in, it's more sheltered. You're not in the full-blown Atlantic. So most of the islands are the boat rides are 20-25 minutes between the islands. So it's pretty,
not great distances, pretty easy.
Not at all. No. And that's part of the adventure and the whole experience.
Indeed. We're going to have a whole free day in Scilly from our base in Hugh in St Mary's. And So there's I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that you could do. Personally, if it was me, I would just probably want to walk around the whole island, just to get a feel for just being in this very, remote, relatively speaking, archipelago. What other things might one want
Well, as you say, yeah, I
3
mean,
days?
obviously just walking around the island. I think probably a full walk around the coastal path, because each of the islands have a coastal path. I think probably St Mary's, that would probably take you maybe 4 or 5 hours. So I think that's probably maybe a bit. The walking is generally quite level, and there are not too many big hills and what have you. But yeah, that might be a bit of a stretch. There are there's a castle on the island which is called the Star Castle, which was built by Henry VIII. In the shape of a star, as the name suggests. And around those, there are what's called the Garrison Walk, which is the old cannon emplacements, which are still in there from the time of Henry VIII, when they were worried about the Spanish and the French. And there's a museum in Hugh in the main town, which sort of charts the history of Scilly through the ages. If you want to go a little bit further, there are some Neolithic and Bronze Age features, some burial tombs and things like that. So, there are a lot of those on Scilly. It was obviously, originally it was connected to Cornwall, and all the islands were one island once. So there's a lot of history there.
A lot of history to be found there. On our next day, on our 8th day of our trip, we're going to visit another one of the islands, St. Agnes. And I understand St. Agnes is sort of a wildlife refuge, for lack of a better word. Lots of different things to see on the fauna side of things.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's an area of what we call an outstanding natural beauty. So it's a protected environment. Yeah, there'll be a lot of seals, a lot of seabirds. We are there at the right time to see puffins on their migration. They'll be in Scilly at that time, so that's quite an unusual thing. I'm not quite sure how common they are in your part in Canada, but they're quite beautiful to see. And yes, so there's a wildlife cruise which will basically take in some of these sites.
Yeah, exactly. And again, you'll get to witness some of this, incredible coastal and remote beauty of the UK that we don't usually associate with, but we can find down here in the Scilly Islands. So after a few days on Scilly, we'll take that ferry back again to Penzance. And then now we're going to head up to, I guess, the North Coast, right, to Padstow, for the next segment of our journey around Cornwall, right?
That's right. I think we've constructed it quite well. That you'll get a contrast. The North Coast is the rugged side of Cornwall. It's the sort of exposed to the Atlantic, whereas the south coast of Cornwall is slightly more say sort of sheltered. So yeah, you see the more dramatic cliffs, and yes, it's a completely different environment. So we're in a good space to explore that side of Cornwall.
Exactly. And Padstow itself sits on the River Camel, I guess it is. And as I understand it, seafood is a real specialty in this particular area.
Yeah, I mean, the Cornwall food experience has grown over the years, and it probably started in Padstow. Again, it's a famous TV chef is based there, and I'm not quite sure whether his famous spread to Canada, but Rick Stein is started a restaurant there, and in fact seems to have bought most of the other ones in the town. So they even call it Padstein instead of Padstow, because it seems to be has got his fingers in so many pies. But it's attracted other chefs. So there are Michelin starred restaurants there. It's it's a real foodie destination.
Fantastic food scene, and no doubt. From our base in Padstow, we're going to take in some interesting places, in particular this Elizabethan palace, or it's not really a palace, it's a private home, I think you were saying.
Yes, it's I think it's pretty much the oldest property in Cornwall that's inhabited by the same family. It was built, I believe, in the late 1590s, or so that the same family lives there, lived there for over 400 years, with the most recent residents taking over in 1988. So yes, it's not a National Trust property in as much as it is lived in by the family. And as I said, there may be a chance of seeing them wandering around while we're there, because it is still, it's an official family home.
Well, we're gonna try to give them a call before we come and tell them we're coming, and maybe they'll invite us in for a
Yeah,
cocktail.
absolutely. They're real characters as well. They're very, very Cornish.
But the other thing on this day that I think is interesting and unique is we're going to be doing a wine tasting, and these are wines that are actually there's vineyards in this area of Cornwall. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, we were a little bit ahead of the curve, I think. Obviously, now across England, there are vineyards, popping up here and there, but they started quite early in Cornwall. Again, the climate is mild and sort of it suits vines, and there are. This is one of the vineyards that produces really excellent wines, a lot of awards, and it'll be great, very interesting. They'll take us around, show us the processes, and we'll get a chance to taste some as well.
Exactly. So I challenge our members who has tasted English wines before, because when we were putting this together and we talked about wine tasting of English wines, I thought, I don't know if that I've ever had an English wine before. So definitely an exciting part of the trip. This next day is also great. We're going to tour along some of the north coast. And one of the highlights is Tintagel, which, I mean, alone from the photo here, pretty cool spot.
Yes, well, this is the bridge across to Tintagel, the island. Previously to this, it's only been open for a couple of years. You'll see just in the bottom of the picture some steps. There were a lot of steps down and a lot of steps up, but now they have a bridge, which was a bit controversial. People like to do it the hard way, but I think they've got used to it now. So that is quite spectacular, as you can see. And obviously Tintagel's history goes back a long way. I mean, it's associated with the legend of King Arthur. Is either his birthplace or the place of his death. It's there's a castle on the island which again dates back to the period when he would have, if he was a really person, that was, the dates tie up, let's put it that way. So the huge amount of history going back for thousands of years.
Absolutely. And again, the whole scenery this north coast is really, really stunning. For this next leg of our and last leg of our trip through Cornwall and Devon, we end up in Devon, specifically in Sidmouth, which is, I guess, on or part of the so-called Jurassic Coast.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, it's in some ways it's sort of known as the gateway to the Jurassic Coast in some ways, because it's the sort of start point in East Devon, as the Jurassic Coast starts there and then runs through Dorset, so Sidmouth is a quite a genteel seaside resort. It's sort of started in the Regency period when people were looking to take the sea air, and then obviously when the railways developed, Victorian age, it became quite popular. So it's quite a mixture of Regency, a lot of quaint thatched cottages. So yeah, it's interesting and quite attractive little town.
Beautiful little town indeed. And from here we get to see Lyme Regis, and Lyme Regis is, I suppose, a known destination, but I would say it's not so much known what it's known for or why it's for. But I understand it's all about the sort of the prehistory, the fossils, and all the rest of it that you can find along the coast. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. This was one of the first areas where really people found fossils and tried to sort of understand what was going on, and it's been a sort of mecca for fossil hunters ever since. The Jurassic Coast, the form, the cliffs and the rock types lend themselves to it. They're sort of quite soft sandstones, and basically these fossils just sort of fall out. So I think they try and discourage people helping themselves these days, but it's been a sort of mecca for fossil hunters over the years. And the town itself is obviously a small port. It's been an important fishing village for a number of years, and it featured in a film, The French Lieutenant's Woman, which is from a book by John Fowles, you see an iconic picture of the heroine of the book standing on the cob, which is a semicircular wall that runs out to sea in a storm. So that's what a lot of people associate with it.
That makes sense, that's what it's known for. So and for those looking for souvenirs, there's perhaps not on the beach, but in one of the shops in town, we can take a little bit of history with us in the form of a fossil or so. We're also going to visit Dartmoor again. The scenery once again quite different here, because you've got this mound of sort of a granite outcrop with a castle on top. What can we expect to see on this day? I understand this area is known for the tors. And what exactly is a tor?
Well, exactly. What we see there, basically, Dartmoor itself is just a mass of granite, and over time it's eroded, and we see these tors, which are sort of raised features which occur throughout Dartmoor, and sort of mark the higher parts of Dartmoor. Yeah, visiting this area, it's quite a contrast to anything else you'd have seen on the trip. It's a truly wild landscape. It's pretty untouched. Obviously, there's farming and sheep and Dartmoor ponies, really, but you have to be the animals that they rear there have to be extremely hardy. It's a tough environment. It's where the army's top soldiers train as well. They put them through the hardest conditions.
Oh wow! So it's so as you say, it's challenging terrain, and but that's what makes it so beautiful, and that's why we're
absolutely, it's a very wild and beautiful location.
Yeah, we're also going to head down and visit Plymouth, which of course is a familiar name, but for most people, I think coming from Canada, they don't necessarily know what it is that Plymouth is famous for.
Well, Plymouth is really, it's home to the British Navy. That's Plymouth and Devonport, and still very much is. So it's always been associated with the Navy and sailing. Obviously, Sir Walter Raleigh playing bowls on the Hoe while the Spanish Armada was supposedly coming, whereas he knew the tides and he said, "No, I'm going to finish my game of bowls. I don't need to rush." And so the Hoe itself is the raised area above the harbour, which you quite often see pictures of. There's a lighthouse on there, Smeaton's Tower, which is bright red and white, and it's quite an iconic. Everyone wants to take their picture of that. So, and then within that, obviously, there is a historic area, which is the old dockside, where they've maintained some of the original features of that dockyard. We obviously have the Mayflower Steps, which is where the Pilgrim Fathers departed for North America. So obviously we just had the Mayflower celebration. Well, unfortunately, we didn't have the Mayflower celebrations. They were due to happen during COVID, the 400th anniversary of the of the sailing, but unfortunately there was a lot of plans to celebrate it, but it never quite happened. But yes, so you can literally go down and see where the Pilgrims boarded the ship before leaving for their voyage.
Yeah. So again, a lot of history here, and an interesting place to sort of round out our trip around Cornwall and Devon. We then make our way back again from Exeter. We'll board our Great Western Railway train, and it's really quite a scenic ride through the rest of Devon and heading back up towards London. Quite picturesque. The ride, I think, is only about 2 hours. It's not even all that long, and then we'll find ourselves back in the heart of London for a nice farewell dinner in keeping with the wheel and anchor tradition. And we'll reflect back on a couple of amazing weeks that we'll spend in this Cornwall and Devon area. An amazing trip, one that has many of our members have asked about traveling to this region. So I'm delighted that we were finally able to bring this to fruition for next spring. And we'll end the trip on that note at the beginning of May. Appreciate your insights Niall, and just bear with us for a second. I'm going to cover off a few of the logistical details. Of course, as usual, everything is in our program itinerary. The trip dates, once again, here, April 21st to the 7th of May. Pricing, of course, as usual, in Canadian dollars. And the program is quite inclusive. They're basically all of the transportation. This is all on a small group basis. When we say small group, we never know, obviously, when we launch this program, how many people are going to be interested, but we anticipate somewhere between 12 and 16, certainly no more than 18 members would be able to join us for this trip. And if, like some of our other trips, we get a lot more demand, then we'll simply do a separate trip immediately following. Yes, all of the wonderful local guides that are organized by Niall and his team, and the admissions and so on. And then typically we have a breakfast at some charming hotels, by the way, that I want to point out that you've found us some great spots in the heart of these towns that are, not mass tourism hotels, but rather, kind of more boutique hotels, I'd say. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. They're really good quality hotels. Yeah, we use them with our our better groups, and we always have fantastic feedback. Yes, no, they're in great positions. So easy to walk out from in the evenings, just to explore on your own.
Indeed, yeah. So well located, and yeah, and just frankly just charming. So yeah, all of that as usual, as with all of our trips, and of course the airfare and insurance, which we are happy to facilitate for you. London, thankfully, is one of the easier places to get to from Canada, because we have flights from numerous cities across Canada, and also price point wise, they are pretty consistent with what airfares to London have been for the last several years, even before COVID. So just to give you a little bit of sense of that, we have been able to work out with Niall to be able to have a bit of an early booking bonus here. So if you're able to sign up for our trip before the 15th of August and get your deposit in, then we can deduct $200 per person from the trip. So that's a little bonus for those of you who are ready to sign up early. And we'll now take some questions. Barb, you'll let us know what questions may have come in during our presentation.
Yeah, if people have questions, they can put them in. Some of them you've already it's been covered. There was a question about the Tregarthen Tea Garden. So yes, we're going there. And accommodations, you've covered what type of accommodations. So what is the weather like at that time of year?
And Niall, I knew that this question was coming. This is like, these days, it's like asking, how long is a piece of string? So, but
Sure.
Typically, I think temperature is, we all know it can rain anytime, but
I mean, I think we're looking to mid to high teens in the temperatures, but I mean, obviously it certainly this year we had some much warmer days than that in the spring. So I would say, we could be lucky, but I think probably during the course of the trip, it could be mixed, but I think we may see a little bit of rain, but I suspect it will be there'll be sunshine between any showers. And as I say, Cornwall itself is it's the mildest part of the UK, so even if we do get some, it's always several degrees milder during those parts of the year.
Yeah. So I think the weather's perfect. And you know what? We like traveling when the weather's in the high teens. And quite honestly, trips that I've been on where we've had some rain along the way, it doesn't stop us. In fact, I think it adds a little bit to the charm to get some of that, misty sort of weather along the coast. It's part of what is, yeah.
Yeah, and obviously, if there are a few bigger waves on the coast, it's quite exciting watching those. People do go to Cornwall sometimes in the winter for their storm watching, but
there you go. Barb, any other questions?
Yeah, the only other question is, I guess, to give a gauge of how much walking would sort of per day on average be expected.
I guess it varies. I would say whatever walking there is during the trip, I think it's all pretty level walking. I don't think we're going anywhere that's going to challenge anyone too much. You know, I guess if people, you know, wanted to have a quieter day and maybe not follow for the whole of a set walk, that can be something we can work in. I guess that's something you come across, Gordon, with people who might want to.
I mean, this trip is designed, we would call this as a moderately, you know, that you should be able to comfortably walk about a mile, so 1.5 kilometers or so at any given time. There's no long hikes on this trip. There's nothing. I mean, there's free days for those that, because we do have more and more members who are keen on walking. And so there is the opportunity to do a lot more. But in the program itself, I'd say it's pretty easy going, but you definitely need to be able to walk, you know, a decent chunk at any stretch. But it's not overly strenuous.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think on this one, there's not too many other questions that have come in. So if people have questions, they can call us or email, and we're happy to answer anything that they might think of outside of the webinar.
And if we don't have the answer right away, then we just, Niall is a short phone call away. So we'll be able to get that answer for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything that comes up.
Yeah, perfect. So there's our contact details again. I think most of everybody has them already, but do drop us a note. We'd love to have you on this trip. It is really a beautiful part of England, and one that, you know, often gets overlooked since everybody tends to head to London. So we hope you'll join us next spring. And of course, a copy of this webinar, a replay of this webinar, will be sent out to everybody who signed up, everybody who's attended today, and even those who couldn't make it. So thanks again, Niall. Thank you for your time today. Much appreciated. And we'll look forward to catching up you on some more webinars that are coming up. That's it for this week, but next week we've got a few more so we'll look for our newsletter on Saturday with those details. So take care, and once again, have yourselves a great rest of the day and a nice weekend. Bye-bye.